Of all the wars to refuse, this is one that I would absolutely refuse to participate in.
Like Tom Woods always says, no matter who you vote for, you always end up getting John McCain. How do you quantify peace of mind? Like if everything fell apart and I had no income, my family is sustainable for multiple years without me making a single payment. Nowhere else could I access this money and sit on my hands for multiple years, make zero payments and zero income and be okay.
Because no one cares about your family and their finances. No one cares about your sons and daughters' futures more than you do. Control your capital. All right, hey, welcome back to Remnant Finance. We've got Brian here with us still. We haven't really talked about this on the podcast yet, but we've been having kind of a scramble in the business because Brian, do you want to explain a little bit about your situation, what's going on, and we'll talk a little bit about that before we get into our topic today, rate of control.
Yeah, I was involuntarily activated. I'm here at the tail end of my career flying tankers, and so involuntarily activated last month for this dumb war. Initially, we thought we were shipping out in 48 hours, but right now we're just activated in place, but could be sent out at any point. So when that happened, I had to kind of hand off everybody in my pipeline to Hans, and really hard to schedule anything and do things in the background with having an unknown short-term future. So weird time, unfortunate time.
Yeah, it really is. Because you've had basically an ace in the hole ever since the mandate stuff, where you made it to your 20. So you have the ability in the reserves in all situations but one to say, hey, I don't want to, whether it's a deployment, whether it's training, anything you want. You basically just have the ability to say, hey, I'm going to drop my retirement paperwork. I'll stick around if I don't have to do X, Y, Z, but otherwise I'll just retire, no problem. And that works in all situations except for the situation where the president mobilizes the National Guard. And so now you go from being able to just drop retirement paperwork to it could be a court martial if you refuse this one. And of all the wars to refuse, this is I feel like I understand what people in Vietnam who were like dodging the draft and stuff. 5 years ago, I would have thought like, those guys like, buckle up and do your duty. But now I'm like, okay, I get it, because this is one that I would absolutely refuse to participate in. And unfortunately, we just lost one of your aircraft, not your squadron, but the 130, the KC-135, the tanker that you fly, had a midair collision, and we don't know the details. We don't know the names yet, but we know that there's a midair collision, and so far a lot of airplanes have gone down. None from enemy fire, all from either friendly fire or mid-airs in this instance. And it's hard to stomach the fact that we're losing good guys for this in a war that we're inevitably going to lose. We're going to tuck tail and run before too long, since this is the most unpopular a war's been at the start, I think, ever, since at least they've been tracking it. At least since World War II, not that we have even declared wars, but there's public support for a lot of these efforts, but this one is in the tanks. And I think this is going to just permanently destroy Trump's legacy, personally, because this is not what he was elected to do. He was not elected to start new forever wars.
Right.
Here we
are.
actually
campaigned on the exact opposite of that.
Yeah, specifically called out the prior administrations overdoing this same thing in Syria. Go down the list. And now we're doing it on a much larger scale, sending half of our military over to a war that doesn't benefit us, in my estimation. And it's really hard. It's really hard to see that we just lost 6 dudes, or ladies. I'm not sure, but yeah, that's rough. So we're hoping Remnant Finance,
and more on the ground. I think
way more than they're saying. Way more than they're saying.
Yeah, I have no idea how many, but I know that I ended up recently flying a mission for the cap when the unfortunately when the bodies came back, where President Trump was there to meet them, and it's just like that even was like infuriating to me, that not that I have to fly the mission, but that we're doing that mission had to exist.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. It's just like, I remember, and I couldn't find it. I looked this up, but I remembered right after President Bush Jr., right after the 2008 election when he left office. And there was a question to him. I really wish I could have found the source, but like Google searching it high and low, I could not find it again. But I remember listening to it, so I can't quote it directly. It's too long ago. But the reporter basically asked him, like, do you worry about, what's gonna, how Obama would handle the same things like that you handled? And he basically said, not at all, because no matter who's in there, they're gonna have to make the same decisions.
Yeah.
Not a direct quote there, but close enough to that. That was the implication. And I didn't really understand that fully at the time. I kind of just remember thinking like, well, that's a weird statement. Like,
Yeah,
you
they're on
guys are all
different
running
teams.
on different things in opposition. Like, that's a really weird thing to say. But I I've come to believe that that is true. And he was actually revealing something that is far beyond what most people believe. And it's that none of the people in power, I'll call it, are actually controlling the decisions. So I think if we had Kamala Harris, we'd probably would have ended up doing the same thing. If we had Trump, it just it feels to me like we're a nation occupied.
Hmm.
By whom? I don't know, but it it yeah, none of this makes any sense. I can't find a single positive to this war. I can only find negative.
And what people, so there is the sentiment that, oh yeah, we just, you know, the supreme leader, the grand ayatollah, he was a terrible guy, a dictator. We took him out, good for us, right? Well, we took out, they elected someone, they nominated the next one, we took him out. They had a council to determine the next one, we took out that entire council, right? So we celebrate that we just took out 90 of their religious leaders. That's one way that people have looked at it, that we've heard. Well, that guy's the ayatollah that was taken out has been in power since 1989. I was one when he came to power. That's a religious figure for the people of
Yeah,
Iran. And so we have
yeah,
this idea that like the CIA can go in and do another color revolution and get this like support that, but for these quote revolutions, and we can have this regime change. Well, last year Iran pulled out, like, was it thousands of Mossad agents, identified them, and basically said, we're going to execute them if you don't get them out. And they destroyed a lot of the intel communication lines. And so that this revolution that they're trying to foment in Iran petered out really quickly, right? And now you have a lot of people who are furious because their leader of 40 or not 36 30 how am I? I'm 37. 36 years was just assassinated, and then the guy who's now in charge is his son, but he hasn't made any public appearances yet. Here's where we are so in over our heads, and they clearly don't have a game plan for this. The guy who's in charge of the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, this is like 25 years ago. He watched what happened in Iraq. They had a very centralized command structure, right? So the U.S. military goes in, shock and awe, 3 weeks, we've decapitated the entire regime, right? Now, he watched that and he said that's not going to happen to Iran. So for the last 25 years, when he became the head of the IRGC, this is Ali Jafari, Muhammad Ali Jafari or Al Jafari. He's been in the news, but he restructured the entire control of Iran, and he took the 33 or 31, I don't recall, like the counties, and made them each essentially their own autonomous military units. And so they answer to the Grand Ayatollah. He can give orders, but beyond him, each of them is empowered to act autonomously to a degree, as I believe, as long as it doesn't conflict with what the Grand Ayatollah says. And until a Grand Ayatollah gives them a new guidance, the president of the country doesn't have the ability to control these 31, 33, whatever it is, 32 autonomous units. So right now, we just decapitated the head of the snake, and you think, well, if this is Iraq, it's analogous to we just took out Saddam and his entire army. So now we can just do what we want. No. Now what we did was we just loosed 31 different military units that have enormous military capabilities that I think we underestimate. And they don't have this centralized control. So even if the president of Iran today said we want to negotiate, and they sent their negotiating team to, I think it's Oman, where the negotiations are going down, and said, we're done, we're going to surrender, whatever you want. Like, they've already tried to make concessions, and we've said no, or Israel said no, we're not going to allow you to make these concessions. And so we have two businessmen Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, who are in charge of like negotiations with our. It's preposterous. It doesn't make sense. We have businessmen that are not negotiators. They're not policymakers who are doing this negotiation with Iran, who is now consists of like a president who's effectively a figurehead because we assassinated the one person who can control these 31 autonomous military units. And so each of them has the ability on their own, and clearly they're doing it, to continuously lob missiles, to continuously fire drones. Like, they can all act independently. And so we did not just cut off the head of the Hydra here. Like, there is now 31 heads that we're going to be fighting indefinitely. They said this is going to be a quick war. It's not going to be a quick war unless we concede defeat early, which we should, tuck tail and get the F out of there. Because what is our goal here? We did not dismantle like the nation of Iran. That's 90 million people. It's a mountain fortress of a country now with 31 furious, different, strong military units. Like, this like makes Vietnam look like a well-planned, easy-to-win war. Like, I think this is going to be a disaster. I could be proven wrong, but I will say I'm glad I did not vote in the last federal election or any of the recent ones, and I feel firmly vindicated on my position of not participating in federal elections, because no matter who you vote for, you're going to get the same outcome. It's just infuriating, and it really hurts when you lose good dudes that didn't need to be there in the first place.
I always, like Tom Woods always says, no matter who you vote for, you always end up getting John McCain.
Yeah.
And he's not wrong. He's absolutely not wrong. And I don't know. I wonder where Kushner's allegiances lie. That's one of the worrisome things to me, but that's another topic.
Yeah, that's Remnant finance
and
after dark.
one of the things that I'm a little bit tired of hearing is, and this is from like the browbeating neocons, is that, you know, these people have been saying death to America since 1979. They've been a 47-year imminent threat to America and all these things. And it's just like, people want to reach back 47 years to that. Well, I keep saying, like, why don't you reach back 26 more years? Because in 1953, the CIA overthrew the democratically elected leader, prime minister of Iran, to reinstall the dictator known as the Shah, put him back in power. So all this really stems from, at the time, it was American oil interests, because after that happened, the Shah gave, between BP and American oil companies, 40% of production capability within Iran. So why don't we go back 73 years to the start of why they may not like America? But nobody wants to take any blame for that in our country, because we pretend like we are always in the morally superior position.
Right.
But it really starts there. It's no surprise they had a revolution to overthrow the same guy that they booted out of office through a fair election. They didn't want him to begin with.
Right. And we talk about them like on paper, yes, like a democracy, a quote democracy, I'll say, is better than a dictatorship, I guess. Like
Sure.
on paper, as a talking point, sure. But in reality, democracy is not democracy. When they talk about it, what they mean is who we want in place. So like Iraq just had elections. We don't like it. Now we're sanctioning them because they elected the wrong person, right? This happened in Moldova. This happened in Romania, all in the last year. They like the tide of nationalism across Europe, because they're realizing, hey, whoever's controlling us, these politicians are not acting in the interest of the German people, of the French people. Like Emmanuel Macron is not acting for the benefit of French citizens. He's gutting that country. Germany, England, Starmer in England. These are not like, England is not English. France is not French anymore. Germany is not German. These countries are being gutted out by globalism. And so you wonder, who are these people working for? They're working for globalists. The EU is a globalist cartel. It has nothing to do with democracy. And so as soon as Romania elects a nationalist leader who's going to go against the calling card, there's always like the current calling card of how do identify yourself as a globalist. Right now in Europe, it's supporting the Ukraine war. So if you go against that as a leader, as someone trying to get elected, and you get overwhelmingly vote in, like Romania, like Moldova, then the EU comes in and says that we got to stamp out nationalists. This is a threat to democracy. The phrase "a threat to democracy" means we are pushing globalism on you. It has nothing to do with democracy, which is simply the act of voting in, like electing a leader as a population. When that happens, if it goes against what the globalists want, like in Moldova, like in Romania, like in Iraq right now, it does, and like in Ukraine, when the Maidan coup, which was orchestrated by us, Victoria Nuland bragging about it. When that happened, they threw out the democratically elected leader of Ukraine because he was on too good terms with Russia. So all of this idea that like we're spreading democracy, we're serving these countries, we're not, and we don't have a business to be doing that. And
No, we don't.
It's frustrating because you watch we're kind of watching the crumbling of this in real time. Like my small, like everyone in the military, like you want to pretend like you're an expert in the thing you studied. Like I'm not an expert in UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, right? But that was the one thing that my contribution to my deployments in the Navy was in the South China Sea, patrolling the maritime sea lanes, enforcing the exclusive economic zone, the territorial waters, like this whole idea that the Navy exists for freedom of navigation. It's like, okay, well, how do you square that? And like these rules of engagement, you gotta, like there's specific SOE for how do you engage a ship at sea, right? We're a helicopter with Hellfire missiles. We've got torpedoes. Like there is a scale of escalation and engagement. If you're going to fire on a ship, you have to first do these different requirements, right? And that's what we train to. I'm not an expert in all that stuff, but I've studied it enough to pass my aircraft commander boards. So when you see that we just went 2,000 miles off of our coastline and sunk ships without warning off the coast of Venezuela, like, okay, you could make an argument for that if you can prove that they were going to come to the U.S. They couldn't make it that far anyways. But if you're going to say that these boats that were just leaving Venezuela were destined with drugs to Miami or whatever, like, yeah, I guess you could make that case. But okay, fair enough. But now you've just removed any pretense of being about law of the sea, free transit, right? Because now, by the same rules that we just laid down, if China sinks a U.S. tanker, all they have to say is we suspected them of smuggling something. We suspected them of something. So at the same time, we're sending warships through the Strait of Taiwan, or we're patrolling the South China Sea in order for freedom of navigation. We're doing things to dismantle that. And so we're watching kind of the falling apart of this idea of the idea of like, we're here to police the world. That held when the laws and the rules that we were enforcing, i.e. law of the sea, i.e. democracy building, we want you to let's overthrow this dictator so you can build your own fledgling democracy. Like, as we watch that, the world is watching and realizing you didn't actually mean any of that. You don't care about freedom of navigation because you just sunk a bunch of boats without even giving them a warning, telling them to turn around. So we're watching these things play out that it's like, there is a lot of people in America that would celebrate watching those boats get smoked. And I get that. Like, if they're actually drug runners, I get the excitement of like, yeah, we just smoked some boats. But at the same time, we don't get to cry foul when China sinks a tanker because they say that they're smuggling contraband. And they do so without giving us any chance at, it's like, I think that we are quickly losing our mantle of being the world police in the eyes of everyone else who's seeing that we're not playing by the rules we're putting in force. And this disaster in Iran is going to escalate. I hope I'm wrong, but I feel like this is going to be this ends when we concede defeat and hightail it out of there with hopefully a reduced number of casualties. But like, they're shelling our base. I mean, like, CENTCOM headquarters in Bahrain is now just is useless because they've been shelling. Like, guys go to Bahrain and you're like, yeah, I'm not deploying. We had a guy from our church that was going to go to Bahrain. He was a helo mechanic, but it's like the debt that he was in. He's like, it's going to be chill. I'm just going to be in a hotel in Bahrain. Like, Bahrain's not going to get hit. That's like a fleet headquarters. Well, now they're all in bunkers. They're Winchester on they can't defend against the missiles that are still coming in. It's like, what are we doing, guys? There's no plan for this. So all that to say, sorry, I'm getting heated because the fact that we lost another 6 dudes yesterday, I mean, that it pisses me off.
That pisses me off.
The fact that there's no plan. Like, what is the end goal here? Okay, we assassinated 90 of their religious leaders. Now we've just infuriated them, and they have 31 autonomous militaries that are all going to, like, they have every reason to fight. And why would they stop fighting? Because we just sent carriers. They would never. They have no reason to stop fighting. We have a reason to stop fighting. It's because we don't give a shit. As a people living our lives in America, what's happening with hijabs in Iran? Like, we don't care about the color revolution happening over there where we shouldn't. It's like, this is not our war. Dude, it's infuriating. And those the families, like, how's Trump going to face those 6 families that had no, like, it sucks, man. It sucks. Like, you might know these guys. We don't know. As of now, we don't know the names. You might know them. Yet. I mean, I know dudes who have gone down in helos. I know dudes who have gone down in planes. It hurts when you know them. But this one I feel like is going to be particularly hard to wrap your mind around and stomach when we concede defeat and realize we had no plan in any of this. Anyways,
Yeah. And I hope you're right that because the poll numbers is something that Trump has always cared about, and this is not a popular operation or war. People's eyes are being opened to a lot of stuff going on. In some ways, in a lot of ways, we can be thankful to Elon for buying Twitter for that, because it's the only place that you can get alternative viewpoints. Everything else has been suppressed from the American people for what, forever. Um, yeah,
yeah,
so I think that the fact that this is so unpopular and it's going to destroy his legacy, it's going to destroy the midterms for him. I mean, look what he's trying to do with Thomas Massie, like the only good congressman that I know
yeah,
of. There might be others, but he's probably the
Rand
best
Paul,
one out there. Was that Rand? Well,
Rand
yeah,
Paul,
Rand Paul is a
senator.
senator. Um, but on the congressional side, it's like you got a list of one or two, and Tom Massie is at the top of it, and he's he's with the stuff that Trump wants, what, probably 95% of the time.
Yeah,
But when he stands strong fiscally and stands against stupid wars, he needs to be thrown out, and they want to primary him and spend a lot of money doing so. And I don't think it's going to work. I think that will be, we'll see how the midterms go with him. I think if he wins, that tells you a lot about what the American people really want, and how much of the veil has been lifted. And it's like
yeah,
there was a Sean Ryan episode with I can't remember the priest's name, a week or two ago, and they were talking about that. And and I agree with Sean. He's like, it's freaking scary, like, as this veil gets lifted and people realize just how demonic the elite are and how awful and how controlled they are, like, what happens? And the priest came back and said, and he's like, the worst thing is going to be because all these people crave is power. And when if the people try to take that away from them, it could get really ugly really fast.
mhm.
So it's like,
And
I'm hoping that more and more people wake up to all the things you just said, and I think a lot more people are noticing. Um, but it can make our lives a lot worse. It's a crazy time, man.
yeah,
I can't think of any time in my life that the world has looked like this.
this has been the one, like this effort to me in the last 6 years ago. I would have been all for this. I would have been like, yeah, smoke those gunboats. Those guys had it coming. Oh, we got to get that brutal dictator in Iran. We got to get rid of him. It's like, well, we went through a COVID lockdown, and I would say every police officer, every governor, every congressman, every person in a position of power who enforced COVID mandates should go jump off the Coronado Bridge. Like, I think what you did was just as treacherous as anything I can imagine. I mean, apart from what's in the Epstein file, which you same people are doing, right? And like in the background of all of this, they're still dumping troves and troves of documents proving that every one of these people is deeply involved in probably child rape, right? Like it's unbelievable, and people aren't batting an eye because we just got rid of this dictator who is never. It's like the mind rot you have to still be thinking that like these people are on different sides, especially, and the fact, like, we just got to recognize, no one is gonna get held accountable for a single thing in the Epstein files, and they're all in it. They're all in
Yep.
them, and they're all doing horrific things. And it's like the Trump is trying to primary Thomas Massie while aligning himself with just that degenerate neocon homosexual Lindsey Graham, who's been
Yep.
desperate for war with Iran for 30 years. Like, Iran's been 2 weeks away from building a nuke for 30 years, and like that degenerate is just bloodthirsty, and he's got to have just the most raging war erection ever right now. And it's like, how is Trump aligning with Lindsey Graham, who hates his guts and will turn on him the second that he's like, why am I listening to real estate developers trying to negotiate a peace settlement with a nation whose existence is being threatened, right? Like, they view this, whether we agree or not, like, they view this as an existential threat, which I would argue is pretty reasonable if you have two carrier strike groups and the largest armada ever massed, largest military force ever sent. I'd imagine, like, you have to concede to them that they probably feel fairly threatened right now, whether that's justified or not. I don't, like, even if you're taking like the most neocon perspective on it, you've got to say, yeah, I would imagine that we just assassinated 90 of their religious leaders, not military leaders, not political leaders, religious leaders. That matters to people, not to these degenerates in power, not to the globalists. Religion doesn't matter. apart from Satanism. But like, it matters to people, right? You might not agree with Islam, but it matters to them, right? They're very passionate about that. We just assassinated 90 of their religious leaders, and the one person now who's the son of the Ayatollah, they've appointed him, but he hasn't made any public appearances. So theoretically, I guess the way out for Trump is if this I can't pronounce Majaba, whatever, but Khamenei's son, who's now appointed but has made no public appearance, theoretically, from my understanding, he could put the lid on this thing. If he issues an order to stand down, he could stand down, but it doesn't seem like that's going to happen because his whole family was just killed. So like this cat's out of the bag, and they are not ready for it. And honestly, uh, yeah, I think I made my.
Well, last thing is, it's funny like what you say about that is I remember, flying out of Qatar for Iraq missions, especially when we, and I mean even for Afghanistan missions, we'd fly there. We'd fly either east or northwest, to those two countries for the stupid campaigns of the 2000s that we were doing. I remember talking to the one intel guy, and usually I never know where they stand, but I was just like, we'd always get briefed on like the threat rings going up the Persian Gulf there along Iran, and then like along the Iranian border and everything, and that was always like a talk of like the threat of Iran, and I was just and they want to build nukes, and we've been talking about that for decades and decades, and I remember saying to the one intel brief that you would do as a crew before you step, and I was like, so imagine you're Iran, and the only country that has ever used a nuclear weapon on human beings has just destroyed, obliterated the nation to your east. They've obliterated the nation to your west. Now they're bombing Syria. Then they went over a little farther west into Africa, and they destroyed Libya and got rid of their dictator. They're positioned to the northwest in Turkey, where they're friends with. They're positioned to the south in UAE. They're positioned to the south in Bahrain. They're positioned to the south in Qatar. They're friends with Saudi Arabia, who's more or less your mortal enemy as far as the Muslim, Sunni, and Shiite and everything goes. And you've watched them destroy every country around you, and they have military bases all the way around you. Would you want a nuke? Because the only people we haven't messed with is Pakistan. Guess what they have?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like when you actually put yourselves in their positions, and I'm not saying Iran is good, and I'm not saying I'm on the side of Iran, but I don't blame them. Like our nation did that to all those countries. No other country. Russia didn't do that. China didn't do that. All the evil axes of power, supposedly. Like we are stationed all the way around them, and we've obliterated 5 countries in their, a baseball's throw away from them.
Yeah. And that we agree or don't agree with, or like support or don't support Iran, it's irrelevant that you, Brian, and me, Hans, agree with what Iran does. Like that's irrelevant to everyone in the world. Like not even my wife cares my opinion on Iran, right? And so it's like it's not even like, do we agree or not? It doesn't matter if we agree. If you're listening, it doesn't matter if you agree with what Iran does or if you don't agree, because objectively, if you have to try to like think through when you're trying to make your own decision as to support or not support an effort like this. That point you just made is irrefutable. Like is it understandable that they are going to view this as as a threat to their existence, and they're going to fight to the death, especially knowing we have no appetite for this war, because nobody on those ships over there has like lost people to Iran. It's like we don't have that emotional attachment. They're fighting for their homeland, and even if you don't agree with their policies, you don't have to agree with their religion, but people will fight for their homeland, and that's 90 million people with a 2,500-year-old culture. The one culture that resisted, like they still have their own language. So like even though like when Islam spread through the Middle East, they still maintain their own language. They speak their own language. They're like they're a 25-year-old proud, long-standing culture, 10 times longer than we as a nation. I love our nation more. I agree with our nation more. Like I'm American. I do too. But like we got to understand what they're fighting for versus what we're fighting for. And I can't find a single effing thing that we're fighting for. And I can steel man their position and make a long list of things they're fighting for from their perspective, most likely. And I'm
nobody ever takes their perspective. The people that love this like refuse to ever. They always look at it from an American lens.
Yeah,
they're unwilling to look at it from that Iranian lens. And I think you have to if you're going to analyze their actions our actions, the actions of the nations around them. Like you can't just look at it from one perspective. You can't look at anything from one perspective. It's like we're told that all the time,
Yeah.
but we don't do that when it comes to this country. But at any rate, I just think this war is an absolute disaster, and we should probably talk about things we can control.
Yes. Yeah. 30 minutes in.
We can't control that.
Yeah, we can't control that, but we can. I mean, and this is a great example. So you have
So
had a rate of control over your life and your involvement with the Air National Guard. You've had an extreme degree of control, like I mentioned at the beginning, at the opening of this. You could say, I don't want to go on this trip. I don't want to go on this deployment. I'm going to drop retirement paperwork if you don't take me off of it, right? You had a lot of control, and now you're in a situation where you lost that
I have
control.
none.
You have no
Yeah,
control. You have to go.
I
If
have
they
none.
send you if they send you overseas somewhere, uh hopefully we don't like lose more planes, but right now, like there's no, if there's nowhere to park you right now, because all of our aircraft are over there, well, hopefully we don't keep having parking spots opening up because of these, mishaps, but you have no control over if you're going to go or not and how long. And so we as a business are trying to, how are we going to keep this podcast going? I've been onboarding over the last couple of weeks, the clients that you were working with, that hadn't gone through the full process yet. And so you have very little control right now over that element of your life. And so we want to talk about this idea of rate of control. So where did you hear that from? Let's give credit to our boy.
Oh yeah, let's give credit to Nate Dean. I had a discussion with him. Um,
IBC
they are
practitioner, Cash Flow Legends podcast, good dude out of Texas. Yep. What
yeah.
unlimited
So
concepts?
Unlimited Life Concepts. Yep. So him and Brandon Goswick, something that he said that they've been talking about, and it really it was a great statement. Is when the rate of return discussion comes up, which we've talked about ad nauseum. He said, I'm sorry, like we don't focus on rate of return in what we do, and they're similarly situated to us. What we want to talk about is what's your rate of control and what's your rate of efficiency of your money,
Yeah.
not always what's your rate of return. And that was just such a great phrase that I'm going to swipe from him. Like, what is your rate of control when it comes to your financial life?
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. I just did a call with the client who's in underwriting now. We're going to be moving forward with this policy, and we were talking. He like me likes to get into the weeds, and so we're talking through some. One of the questions was, okay, well, how would I compare? I was going to work with this company potentially, but I think I like this. Like I like Lafayette. I like this illustration I'm seeing. But my question is about the dividend rate. So this other company, if they have a higher dividend, would that be better off? How would I compare, if Lafayette has a higher interest rate than this other company, is my arbitrage going to be there? And we're getting really technical on this rate of return question. Interest rate that I'm paying on my policy loan versus the dividend rate. And so we talked about your dividend rate. It's not something you can compare across companies, right? It could be a gross dividend. It could be effectively
Can't
it's
do
a
it.
marketing tactic between
It's
companies.
it,
It
it's
doesn't
all
mean anything.
smoke and mirrors.
Right.
Smoke and
Doesn't mean
mirrors.
anything.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's not like, if you have $100,000 and you get a 6% return, we know that's $6,000. It's not like that. If you have $100,000 of, say, cash value, and the company declares a 6% dividend, it does not mean your dividend is going to be $6,000. There's the contribution principle. There's all these factors that go in, and it's not something that you can really measure. But what I said was, here's why I don't care what the interest rate is, and I don't care what the dividend rate is, and I'm not trying to make this arbitrage play where I'm only going to take a loan from this company if my dividend is higher than my loan interest rate. Like there's a lot of ways you could slice this, but at the end of the day, here's how I'm actually using my policy, and here's what I'm not doing. I'm not checking my dividend, and I'm not checking my dividend, comparing it to my illustration to see if it was higher or lower, and I'm not checking my dividend interest or my policy loan interest rate in relation to my dividend percentage. Like I'm doing zero of those things, because what I value is control. The policy loan I have outstanding that I've used to acquire different investment assets, I'm, like I've said before in a couple recent episodes, I'm making that interest only for myself. I'm paying back the interest, but I'm maintaining the principal. The reason I'm doing that is because I value those dollars being out working. They're working for me in the policy, but they're also out earning for me. And I want to be able to control that principal. I'm not currently paying down that principal. And so that control of being able to just pay the interest on the policy loan, to me, is worth more then maybe I could go out in the market and find a loan with a better rate. Like, I don't care about that. It's about rate of control. That's such a powerful concept and a flip on how you think through it.
Oh,
That's it. Yeah. Sorry.
yeah.
That's, yeah. Pause.
Yeah, it really is, and I'm doing the same sort of thing, with me because I've got multiple policy loans from multiple companies, and actually, I do look at the interest rate on the policy loans because I've just laid them out, and all I'm doing at this point in time actually is focusing on just paying them down based on those interest rates for the different companies that I have loans with, and I'm just plowing it all into one, and to the point that I'm even letting the interest from the other loans roll in because I'm paying that equivalent amount off on the higher one. And then when it hits a certain point where it's going to cost me a little less, I'll start paying on another one to pay, to reduce the actual interest cost of my life. I'm not, I don't even care what the interest rate and like you said what the dividend is. And by the way, like just if you're curious because he talked about the expenses there, you have the gross dividend rate and the net dividend rate. And that's why it's smoke and mirrors because they publish the gross and then they deduct three main areas. They deduct the mortality expenses, the commissions paid, and the net operating expenses of the company from that huge gross dividend, which they give a percentage on. And they give you what's left. And they never publish the net dividend, which is what you actually receive. So one company could say it's a 6%, we're offering a 6% dividend. If you had $100,000 in two companies, this company could say we have a 6% dividend. The company next to it has a 5% dividend, and you get a higher payout from the one that published a lower rate, the 5%, because they had better expenses. They were more efficiently run. So it doesn't make a difference, and it doesn't really tell the whole story on what you see on the list out there. But anyway, yeah. So having that control, I'm able to optimize the pay down structure of the four policies of our 11 that I have policy loans against and just look at like, hey, what's this one costing me this year? Because those are variable rates. I'm just going to pay that one. I'll let the interest rate on the other ones roll into the loan because I'm going to come back and focus on those at some other time. Now, my net interest paid across all four is much lower because I'm focusing in a smart place, but I have the control. I had the complete control on how I do that and how I make it work best for my, household economy.
Yep.
And that's such a powerful thing that you wouldn't have anywhere else. Anywhere else, I would just be making payments across the board, probably min payments across the board because there's four of them and they're pretty large loans. Now I can flush all that into one and not even worry about the others. That you can't get that control in any other system I know of. And that money is working for me, like you said.
Yeah, and that's part of the challenge of actually quantifying the value of a policy. I know that Caleb Williams is working on a tool, and he's talked about it a lot on his podcast, where he's trying to actually say, how do we put a dollar amount on these rights and these benefits in the policy? Because obviously, if you look at your internal rate of return on the policy or your total dividends relative to your cost basis, like you can make like numbers are easy to measure, right? But what about the fact that your death benefit's tax free? Well, we can kind of measure that because we could say how much money would you need in an investment account that's taxable to come out with the same, post tax payout that you're going to get from this tax free death benefit. Maybe $1 million of death benefit, you might need 1.3 of an investment account, right? But then beyond that, like the numbers are easy there. But then, okay, well, how is it going to pass through probate? Are you going to receive all of those? Do you have to take distributions, or can you pass the whole thing? When do they take those distributions? Like, there's so many nuances to it that it's hard to really quantify.
How do you quantify peace of mind? Like, if
Right.
everything fell apart and I had no income, my family is sustainable for multiple years without me making a single payment. I have multiple years of cash value in our expenses. So how do you quantify that peace of mind? Nowhere else could I access this money and sit on my hands for multiple years, make zero payments and zero income and be okay. Now, if all fell apart, of course, I'd find a way to make some income and stretch that out even longer, even if my income drastically dropped. But there's nowhere else I can do that. Like there's so many aspects to this that you can't quantify. How do you quantify the ability? The great example that a lot of people have even talked about, they loved the example of when I bought that property because it's a good one. It's so outside of what everybody talks about. Everybody's always talking about turning your policies to either buy, things you need like cars or to make more money. And it was just like I expanded the land behind my house and prevented 5 houses from being built because I had access to capital. I can't put a dollar symbol on that, and I couldn't have done it with a 401k $50,000 loan.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so there's a lot of aspects, and I kind of cut you off there. I apologize, but
No,
so
you said
I
what I
hope
was
you
going to say.
retain that thought.
Yeah, well, it was essentially, I was going to say, you said, how can you put a price tag on peace of mind? I was going to say, how can you put a price tag on control? And so let's take an example where we're going to strip away whatever investment returns I'm making on my policy loan. We're not going to even make that comparison. We're just going to say, to try to isolate it to the value of control, we're going to say, we're going to go to the example we talk about in policy loans where it's not an investment, but you're financing an expense. And you've ran all the calculations, whatever. You've talked about your opportunity cost. I don't have a better opportunity cost for this money, so I'm actually going to use a policy loan for this car purchase, right? And now I'm going to control the note. I'm going to pay off the car in cash at the dealership, but I'm going to have the policy loan, right? However you got there, you decided it's optimal for you to finance this vehicle. And you have two options, and one of them is the policy loan, and one of them is financing with the dealership or Navy Federal or whoever. Each of them, you assign yourself $1,000 a month repayment. You would have $1,000 a month repayment to Navy Fed. You know you don't have to make this loan repayment, but you choose to. And so in both of these two parallel scenarios, you're paying $1,000 a month. Now, something happens to your income. You get laid off. We have another COVID hoax, something like that, right? You're not making income right now. In one scenario where you're paying Navy Fed $1,000 a month, what options do you have? Well, none. You could sell the car. You could default on the note. You could ask them if they'll give you forgiveness. Maybe you can hope that there's some kind of equivalent to the COVID rent forgiveness or something like that. Very likely that's not going to be the case. You don't have any options. What are your options if you took the other path where you're on that policy loan? Well, you could just stop paying the policy loan, right? We're always going to caveat and say you should be a good banker, pay back your loans. But how do you put a price tag on the ability to cut out $1,000 expense in your budget, i.e., repaying this policy loan when things get tight? Say you just pause for a year and reallocate that $1,000 to food or whatever. Like, can you put a price on what that's worth in that scenario? Like that hypothetical scenario. You might not go into that decision planning to not pay. You go in planning to pay $1,000 a month. But when something happens, how much is it worth it to you? So what if your rates were different? That was an example of an even rate. What if you had to pay $800 a month because you got a 4% loan with Navy Fed, and you choose to give yourself $1,000 a month payment to the insurance company because you have a 6% loan there? Well, clearly, if you're just looking at what has a better loan rate, you would say, well, I'd go with the 4% versus the 6%. But how much do you value the control? How much do you value the ability to say, because again, I'm saying $1,000 payment, but you don't have to pay it. So you could make it an $800 payment. You have the full flexibility. You can make this an $800 payment if you want to match what you would pay the dealership. But if you choose to make it 1,000 or you choose to make it 800, it doesn't matter. Like if something happens and you want to pause your payments, how much is that control worth to you? I prefer that rate of control, which again, I think rate of control is a better term than trying to put a dollar amount. And I know there's that effort to put the dollar amount on it because everyone is analyzing and scrutinizing this dollar for dollar on every metric. It's like, well, how does this dollar compare to this dollar? How does this dollar to this dollar? Well, let's talk about rate here. And instead of, I'm not going to say that being able to pause payments if I need to is worth, 10% of my payment, whatever. Like I can't put a dollar on that, but that rate of control, that variable of control is to me more important than a percentage or two arbitrage difference.
I agree. And we completely get that. Well, not completely, but we get a massive amount of control there. We get a high rate of control when it comes to our IBC policies. But even if you think further, if you reach back to our episode, I wish I knew the number off the top of my head with George Harrison. Harrison George, sorry, not the musician, Harrison George.
We got some big names
from,
coming up.
from CFG Mortgage, who does the all-in-one loans. And I did one of those all-in-one loans. And the reason, it was the exact same reason. So I'm focusing on that everywhere. So it is a higher interest rate than I could have gotten a VA loan or probably a commercial or, conventional loan somewhere. But because I use that in like a velocity banking scenario where I'm dumping all of my income into it, paying it down more quickly and then writing my expenses back out of it. So it's an always fluctuating principal balance of my mortgage. But what does that give me? That gives me a massive amount of control because the only thing they charge, so if I have a $200,000 window between the cap of my line of credit and where the current mortgage balance is, you know, factor in, I don't know, whatever it is, 6 something percent on my mortgage, that's all they're going to charge. So if I stopped flowing my money into it and stopped writing my bills out of it and went back to the local bank, PNC Bank, and started flowing all my money there and just left that $200,000 window, it would just tack on the couple $1,000s of interest every single month. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't lose my house. It's like the same example I gave before. If all else fails, I could do nothing for years because I've paid down enough of that principal and not lose my house. So I pay a higher interest rate on my home than I would have had to, but I have complete control of how fast it gets paid off, how I get the money out of it, and the freedom of not being beholden to the bank as long as I'm not up against the cap. Now, of course, if I let that run all the way out and the line of credit ran out of room, they're going to take the house. That's everybody knows that's part of the risk. I don't have 100% control, but I probably have 90% more control than I would with a conventional bank or a conventional mortgage.
Yeah.
So this and the idea of that control, you can integrate into all these different financial aspects of your life versus what is the typical advice. If we go to Dave Ramsey, get a 15-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage. If we go to the 401k, like always max out your 401k where you have access to, as far as I know that because I know the TSP rules, $50,000 that you can pay a 3-year term on or whatever the number of years is. It doesn't even matter. You don't have control of that money. You don't have control of how that money is invested. So I like having the money in a place that I know gives me peace, security, opportunity, and usage and efficiency whenever I want it, and efficiency in how I use it.
Right. And when you said that, yeah, if you just let this thing go forever, there could be a scenario where they take your house, right? Like we're not saying that, we're not like pitching this as this kind of miracle, solution here. Like this is, it's just a whether we're talking about the all-in-one mortgage, whether we're talking about understanding and using a policy loan, like it's just an asset with rights to access, right? It's just an asset. And
Yeah.
so what matters is your behavior more than the policy structure, right? We could write you the perfect policy, and then if you don't fund the PUA rider, it doesn't get the return, like it doesn't get the numbers you were hoping for. Like your behavior matters way more than the policy and how it's constructed. However, we want
Who
to
is
set
the
up
banker?
with the optimal tools for control. And what are we doing this for down the road? Why does any of this matter? Is because one day we want to be in a situation where we are in full control of our capital and don't have to depend on anyone else for anything. And why do we want money? Because we want to facilitate the things of our life. And so all of this is an effort to gradually, 1 degree at a time, take back control. We say stop being a passenger. Like that's the motto of our company, right? We have our unofficial model in the secret stash, which, by the way, we have a merch store. If anybody wants to get the best looking swag out there, shop.remnantfinance.com. What we've got on a lot of that merch, we've got our motto, stop being a passenger. We say that all the time. I mean, we haven't said it in a while, but it's on all of our stuff. That idea is like, you're not along for the ride. As fathers, you need to be the CFO of your family. You need to be the one making these decisions because we don't outsource this. Like your knowledge on policies, like you're not going to probably reach Brian and I's level on whole life insurance mechanics, and you don't need to, but you need to understand what you have, and you need to know how to ask questions to ask us, and we'll help you. We're not going to reach Neil McSpadden's level, our tax guy. We're not going to reach his level on taxes, but we need to at least understand what we have and how to ask the right questions and know that we're taking back control. And if you're in the real estate business, I'm never going to know as much about real estate as you. Like you're going to have your specialty, but you should be the CFO and bringing all these pieces together for your family, because no one cares about your family and their finances. No one cares about your sons and daughters' futures more than you do. And so we need to stop outsourcing this. And this is an area, this rate of control, taking back control a degree at a time. That is a continuous focus and a continuous process that we can all do. And understanding a policy loan is a great way to take back a few degrees of control when you're making your next lending decision, or if you need credit. That's a great tool to have. That's a great thing to have access to and to understand when you're making that decision. Does it mean it's always going to take a policy loan? No. I'm financing a car with a dealership right now because it made more sense than burning through my available policy loan because I would rather invest that, right? And I don't want to also save up cash and burn that cash because I want that cash to be invested or I want that cash to be in a policy. So it's like it's not like this panacea, one size fits all. You're always just going to take a policy loan and it's always going to be superior, and it's just going to be free money. Like you could get a policy, mismanagement, and hurt yourself and find yourself worse off. Our goal is the education so that doesn't happen. But it's all about taking one step closer to understanding what you have and increasing your rate of control. It's that is the primary thing over dollar return, like
Yeah,
control and understanding.
I think so too. And you know what you said is whenever you have the capital that you could have financed that vehicle yourself, but you chose not to because whoever has control of the capital makes the rules on that. It's the golden rule. So you are still the banker. You are still in control of that because if you had to, you could swipe a check tomorrow and take it over. And that's the important part is that you can still control the equation. You
Yeah.
did it in a way that was optimal for your current situation. So yeah, and it's a perfect example because what we teach here isn't something you have to always do. You don't have to. Now, there's the philosophical argument of getting out of the banks because of it's one of the most evil institutions probably in the world, and not doing business with them. And that was a philosophical stance of Nelson. And in many ways, I agree with it. But the banking function and the banking world is going to go on. Like we're not going to defeat what exists out there. And if you can do it better for your family, you're in control of that function, and you should take control of it. And that makes me think of something else that he always said is every man should be in two businesses. The one he earns a living in and uses to pay for the things he does for life, and the banking business. And he
Mm.
said of the two, banking is more important. How do you finance the things of your life? How do you flow? How do you keep control? What is your rate of control of your money? And if you're not controlling it, if everybody else has control of it, and believe me, they do. The mortgage company has control of your life. The car company has control of your life. The tax man has control of your life. The credit card man has control of your life. Everything that you're flowing money out without you being able to take control of is you giving that up to somebody else. You are a
Right.
slave to that institution. And so the whole idea here of IBC is really freeing yourself from all of that institutional graft and taking control and being able to do it under your own terms for your own family's benefit.
Yeah. There's our friends Dave and Paul, their podcast is Wealth Warehouse, and they have a slogan that I think is really good. And they they say at the end of every episode, control your capital or
Or
someone
someone
else.
else will.
And so we've had calls with clients who became clients or prospective clients who became clients and have policies now, and they are implementing these strategies we talk about. They're trying to become their own banker, whatever you want to call it. They're trying to take back some control. And we have clients who said this isn't for me. Those people that said this isn't for me are still someone's still controlling their capital, and hopefully it's still them. Hopefully it's them through other means than the strategies we talk about. But someone is controlling their capital, whether it's them or somebody else. Those people, there's another it's the Wealthwise podcast, and they say I'm going to butcher. I was trying to remember what it was, but it's basically like their kind of catchphrases. You're already in the banking business, you just don't know it yet. So very close to that, I
Yeah.
think. And so everyone, whether you've gotten a policy with us, gotten a policy with someone else, vetted the idea and turned it down, or never even thought about this before, maybe you just stumbled across our podcast because you just look for like financial podcasts or something. I don't know, but um, you are in the banking business and you are like the role you should be. I mean, you are in the seat of CFO for your family. It's just do you have someone fully outsourced doing that? Like, are you a shell in that role, or are you doing it? And someone is making a lot of money off of the banking function in your life, and we want that to be us as
Yeah,
policy.
if you're in the banking business, the real question is, are you the person making the banker rich, or are you acting as the banker?
Right.
Letting your own money, not in such a way that other people are necessarily. Now they can be if you do loans, but other people aren't paying you for the banking function, but you're controlling it for your own local economy. So you are the benefactor as the banker, or are you just the customer? You can
Right.
be both at the same time. And that's the point. As the customer, you're always making them rich. You can be your own customer, helping
Yeah.
make your own family richer. That's
I'm
the
kind of thinking
control
through the
side.
analogy, like as you're talking, I'm just thinking like the Moody Family Bank exists whether you're doing this or not, whether you have any policies or any thoughts on control. The Moody Family Bank exists, and I would say this is not fully fleshed out idea, but like if you're not thinking about this and you've outsourced all of this control and understanding, rather than being a customer at the Moody Family Bank, I'd say you're like a bank teller. Like you just someone hands you money and you hand it out to the people that come in and
Yeah.
demand it, right? You're the teller, like you're in a transactional role. Money comes in and money goes out. But what we want is you to be upstairs in the office overlooking, in control. And I want all of like the reason I'm not using my cash value for a policy loan to pay this car off right now is because I want all the like I'm a slave owner, right? My stock. I come from John C. Calhoun, the guy who wrote the South Carolina Papers, which declared or which came up with the idea for the South to secede. So I come from a line of slave owners historically. I'm a slave owner today. My slaves are my dollars, and they're out in the field. I don't want them. I don't want them just relaxing. Like they're doing good work in the policy, but I want them out in the field. So I'm whipping them. They're not going to stop working for me. I want them to be my tellers, actually sending the money in and out, right? And I think I might be the only person to make a slavery analogy uh, like that in the IBC world. But
Maybe you might be the first. Maybe we can get you on stage next year at the think tank.
yeah, I'm sure that'll go over swimmingly. Um, but no, I want to be, I want to be the I, I'm in control of those dollars, and so I don't want those dollars just to go and sit at a dealership because I want like the car to be paid off. Like I'd rather I know I'm going to make those payments, and maybe I will decide it's worth it to just cut the bank out. Like I'm using them as a tool. I'm using them. I have a car in my driveway and it's costing me the monthly payment. But in the meantime, I'm holding on to the rest of that capital and it is out in the fields earning for me. It's not going to stop earning. I don't want to just call them in from the field and then send them away. I don't want to sell them to another slave owner. They're my slaves. I'm not going to sell them. I'm not going to put them on the auction block. Like they're my slaves. They're going to stay out in the field working for me. And then some of it I'll call in and I'll pay it off. Right. So I don't be the bank teller in your family bank. Be the CEO of the bank. Be the person sitting in the office managing the tellers, managing the staff, right? Because you are in the business of banking. You just, as they say on Wealthwise podcast, you might not know it yet. I think that's what they say. But maybe our new tagline has to be like, be a brutal slave owner. We'll see how that plays.
Yeah, yeah.
A
And
diligent slave owner. I'm a diligent slave owner. Cash value slaves.
I don't know if it's a great one.
Yeah, I don't think it's enough. Even with our audience, like I feel like if you're still here, we might have turned off some people with our reviews at the beginning, but I kind of feel like that's becoming a lot more common, that the way of thinking of like actually America first, not just saying it, but actually thinking through and meaning it. So maybe if you're still here, maybe that idea of being a financial slave owner resonates with you. But that's how I've thought about it for a while. So anyways, but rate of control, that is what matters to me more than interest rate of return.
Yeah.
Um,
Rate of control, and like Nate said when I was talking with him today, rate of control, rate of efficiency. And this is the most efficient place to utilize your dollars and to get them flowing into other places where they can be more productive. It's almost like leave an inheritance to your children's children, but if you think of that in some, and not just in the human term, but like I want my dollars to be creating children that create children, because I want them out there working and working more and consistently compounding alongside to my family. So, um, yeah. So, how efficient can your dollars be, and what control do you have over it? That's really what IBC is all about. Who controls the banking function? Who controls the flow of dollars in and out of your life?
yeah, yeah, and I think we beat that horse to death. And in a sense, that is the essence. That is the if you put
Why are you still beating it then?
you always continue to beat a dead horse. But if you put our entire podcast transcript history into ChatGPT and said, summarize this podcast in one sentence, I think it would be somewhere along those lines, right? It'd be along the lines of something we said in probably the latter half of this podcast, and not my slave owner analogy, but something along the lines of like the most important thing we can convey is to understand and be in control. So that horse, we can let it lie.
Yeah, let's let it rot. All right.
Yeah. All right.
All right,
Well,
man.
but yeah.
Please, whether especially if you agree with us, share this, subscribe to the channel, please. If you didn't agree, still do those things. It's awesome and helpful to us, and look forward to getting back on here hopefully soon and continuing these conversations.
Yeah. And
But
let's hope
if
that
you
we.
if you if you see a bit of an absence from me, you'll understand why. It's not because we parted ways.
Yep. We'll bring on some guests and I'll do some solo ones. So if you guys really love macroeconomics, you'll be excited. Most people probably won't be. But let's hope we surrender this stupid war sooner than later so Brian doesn't have to go.
Yeah, that's the hope. All right, man.
Cheers.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to Remnant Finance. If you found any value at all in this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend.
Remember, true financial freedom comes from taking control of your personal economy and breaking free from the status quo. So stop being a passenger in your family's financial future.
Boldly take back control of your wealth. Until next time,
This is Brian and Hans signing off.